Let's set up a basic React application we can work with. For that, I'll add two files in the containers folder, a users.js file and a pisa.js file, because I want to show a pisa in my project. Again, it won't be super useful, but it will use an image, it will use lazy loading. In the components, I'll then add my pisa image.js component. Whoops, that should be without JS though, that's just a folder name. So pisa image, and in there I want to have my pisa image.js file and my pisa image.css file. And I plan on using CSS modules here. Now I won't create a users component because I don't really need one. I'll code everything I want to display there into that users file. With that, let's work on the pisa image, and for that we of course need an image. Now you can find one attached to this lecture, and I'll just put it into the assets folder. That's the pisa.jpg file I'll use. In the pisa image.js file, I'll then create this as a functional component. Pisa image will get some props eventually. Then I want to output a div here, which should get a class name of, and there I want to use CSS components as CSS modules. So here this will have a class pisa image. Now for that I need to import that. So import classes from ./pisa image.css. And since we use JSX here, I also need to import React from React and export this as a default. Now you might notice that React, of course, isn't installed yet. We'll do this in the next lecture where we install all the dependencies we need. For now, I'll import it, but nothing will work here. We don't have a workflow and we don't even install React, just writing the bare code. So inside my pisa image div, I then want to have an image, self-closing, where I want to import an image and output it here as a source. Now for that, I will import my pisa image from, and now I want to navigate to that assets folder and there grab that pisa.jpg file. And my build workflow should essentially copy that file to a new destination then and give me a link to that file in this constant, which I can therefore output here like this. So this is my pisa image component. I'll also give this image a class, which can be classes pisa image. Now I need to give this some styling, and I should rename pisa image here to pisa img maybe, because I already have pisa image for the overall component style. So pisa image is the div here. I'll give this a width of 80% and a height of, let's say, 300 pixels, a margin of 20 pixels and auto to left and right. And I want to center any text, and since the image is an inline style, it should be centered for that reason. I'll then have my pisa img, which is the image itself. And there I want to set the max width to 100% and the max height to 100%, so that it respects the boundaries of the container while still keeping the aspect ratio. Let's see if that works. We can always fine-tune this later. With that, we got our pisa image configured. Now to the pisa container. There I'll import React and the component from React. And then here I will create a new class, pisa, which extends component, and where I will have a render method, of course. In that render method I'll return some JSX, and here I want to use my pisa info, my pisa image, excuse me. So I'll import pisa image from, and now I need to go to the components folder, pisa image, and get that pisa image.js file. And then here I'll have a wrapping div, let's say, and in there I'll have a h1 tag where I'll say the pisa, but more importantly below that I'll include my pisa image component like this. And that should give me this pisa, component with the class-based approach. I'll then of course export pisa, the class, as a default. I'm now copying this and putting it into the users.js file. Now I won't import my pisa image here, and the component will be named users. But here I'll then say the users, and maybe output a paragraph too where I say awesome users on board of this course. And that's just any dummy content I want to output. Now I got 2 containers. Now I also want to load them via routing. So in my app.js file, my root component, I'll also import React and component like this from React. And then I'll create my class app, which extends component. And in there, I'll have my render method, of course, return some JSX. And here we now want to use routing. So first of all, I'll add a div to wrap everything. And in here, I'll then have another div where I want to have 2 links. So there, I'll now import something from React Router, which we also haven't installed yet. I'll import the link component from React Router DOM. Again, we will install these dependencies in the next lecture. And then I'll add my link here to just slash, let's say. There, with this link, I want to reach my users. And the Pisa part should be lazy loaded. So I'll add just a pipe symbol in the white space to have some separator between the links. So here, slash Pisa, that is another link, but this component should eventually be lazy loaded. So here, I'll name this Pisa. The interesting part now comes below that div here with the links. Here's the div where I want to render the routes. And for that, I'll import route from React Router DOM. Now here, there will be 2 routes. The first route is simple. For the slash path, which I want to match exactly, I want to load a component, and that should be my users component. So I'll jump up to the imports and import users from ./containers users.js. But then I'll also import the Pisa. So here I'll add another import where I also import the Pisa component from containers Pisa. And with that, I can now say that for the first route here, I want to render users, it's a self-closing element. For the second, where the path is /Pisa, I want to render another component, but this one should now be lazy loaded. And we learned how to load stuff lazily. We wrote the code for this in the routing section. So I'll quickly grab the code from there. You can also find it attached to this lecture, or you get it from your own routing project, the one you wrote when following along maybe. And this is a new higher order component which I want to add. So I'll create a higher order component folder in the source folder, and there I'll name it async component.js. And now I'll quickly add that code we wrote in the routing section, and I'll paste it into this async component.js file. It's the same code as we wrote in the routing section. Now we can use that, and I want to use it in my app.js file. So here I'll import async component from /hoc async component.js. By the way, all the file extensions are missing because I want to have the same setup as in Create React App, where it's automatically adding these file extensions. So now I import that. I won't import Pisa like this anymore. Instead, this should now happen asynchronously. So now what I'll do in my app.js file, I'll create a new constant outside of the class declaration, and I'll name it async Pisa. The name is up to you. Important is that I'll use my async component function here. And as you might remember, we need to pass an anonymous function to it. So I'll do that. And in here, I now want to return a dynamic import. And here I now point to the path I want to import from. So that's containers Pisa, like this. Now we can use the async Pisa here as a component we want to load when navigating to /Pisa. This is my app setup thus far. Now, of course, we need to mount this app. And for that, I need to go to the index.js file, where thus far I only import my CSS. Here I want to import React, of course, from React. And I want to import React DOM from React DOM, because I need to render my React app to the DOM. And again, we will install all these dependencies soon. I also need to import the browser router from React Router DOM. And then I can create a new constant app, that's optional, where I will use the browser router as a wrapper, and I want to wrap my app component with it. So I need to import that too. I'll import app from ./app like this. So this gets wrapped here. That's the component. So this part is what I actually want to mount to the DOM. So I'll add React DOM render here at the bottom to then render app in the place of this root element. So this div with the ID root in the index.html file. So for that, I'll now reach out to it with document get element by ID and then pick the root element here. Now with all of that, our React application is mounted, should be ready to work. We'll see if it works once we actually can see it in action. And that's the part I'll start working on in the next lecture, creating a workflow so that we can build this project and see if it does work.